Congress is not allowed to pass firearm laws. They never have been. They never will be. But I want to show you something on the Federalist Papers number 14. It says, in the first place, it is to be remembered that the general government is not to be charged with the whole power of making and administrating laws. Its jurisdiction is limited to certain enumerated objects. Okay? I'm gonna go show you where the Congress thinks that they are gaining their power. We can thank one guy. His name was Chief Justice John Marshall. Well, he was flawed. You know, every person has flaws. And he got along pretty good, you know, in the beginning. He was doing great. You know, he passed that Madison versus Marbury thing, you know, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. But he was one of these guys who wanted government to be bigger than it really was. And he forgot that aspect of it, that the founders only wanted limited government. Okay, he was a Chief Justice from 1801 until 1835 when he died. We'll get down here. Well, number one, he wanted to enhance governments, what he wanted to do. And it's a shame that he did this, but that's just the way, you know, some people are. Nobody is infallible. We'll get to it, people. Just hang on here. I just don't want to go too far. Now, right here, Madison versus Marbury in 1803, you know, he did good there. He used his head. Now, this guy had no formal education. He had no constitutional upbringing other than the wars and stuff. Anyway, this guy really, how can I say that? He perverted the Constitution. I think mostly by accident, but he did. Anyway, he's got this thing that, you know, in 1819, in McCulloch versus Maryland, the Supreme Court asserted the doctrine of implied powers granted to Congress by the Constitution. Now, he goofed up there. He had a daunting task ahead of him trying to figure out how to make it look like the government had power over the states when it come to banks. And it says here, the ruling infuriated state rights, because he used this, he used a daunting task located in the Constitution. He turned to Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 18, which grants to the federal government the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying out the powers, and it was explicitly granted to the Constitution. And that's true. It was. But it's also a limited power, I just showed you. They have to stay within those rights. That's what the Constitution says. It says, to make all laws which are necessary and proper for carrying out the execution of the foregoing powers and all other powers vested in the Constitution by the government, so on and so forth. So they are limited to what's in there. Had our founders wanted Congress to have all kind of powers, they wouldn't have limited them to the enumerated powers. If they could just do what they wanted, like this Marshall's saying, why would you need the Constitution? And why would you need the enumerated powers written into the Constitution? It's a limit. It means, whoa, horse, stop right here. You can't go no further. So Congress has been using the necessary and proper law to pass all these firearm laws, which is unconstitutional. The Constitution did not grant Congress any kind of power over what they already had. A well-regulated militia being necessary, and this is the only place that shows this, it needs to be necessary for the security of a free state, for the right of the people to keep and bear arms, and it shall not be infringed. Excuse me. Tell you what, people, you got to remember the Second Amendment. It stands as a guarantee that neither the power or the prestige of the federal government could ever be used to control it or to influence anything in it. That's what that means. Gun laws exceed congressional jurisdiction, period. They only have certain specified powers. And Congress has gone overboard with it. Now we need a review. Instead of you're not going to get the Congress to do away with their extra powers. So you've got to bring it on to the Supreme Court and hope that they're honorable enough and honest enough to review the 1819 case, McCullough versus Maryland, overturn that law, and put the Constitution back into its proper perspective. Not something to be walked upon by Congress or the Senate or the President or even the Supreme Court of the United States. That's what we're asking them to do. Now John Marshall was very overzealous about this. Maybe he had a big ego because he had won such a landmark thing as Madison versus Marbury. You got to remember, by 1819 he was in his 60s and may not have all of his faculties right. But the Constitution, if you look at the original intent, which would be the Declaration of Independence and the Federalist Papers, Congress was not granted any more powers than what was listed in the Constitution. And I said before, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. There's no stipulation or subparagraph A, B, C, D, which would stipulate what an acceptable infringement would be. Therefore, there are none. Congress is constitutionally barred from infringing upon any of your rights. Period. But like I said, they've been using this necessary and proper clause for so long. It may have the color of law, but it has no substance of law. There's nothing to back that up. If you look at the Constitution, you'll find out that Congress has been in contempt of the Constitution for a long time. Okay, well, that's enough for today. You think about what I said, but that necessary and proper law is only limited to the enumerated powers. It doesn't go beyond that. And this guy knew it, but he was trying to make a point because he wanted to give the government more prestige. There he is. And a lot of the judges did not trust this guy. Alright, thanks for watching. I better put this up so you see that I was on John Marshall. Thanks for watching, guys.